I'm a fulfilled man, and I look forward to the man I'll be in 20 years. I'm as fulfilled as I could possibly ever hope for in life. Absolutely. My growth is, I'm like a plant that's rooted through its pot. You can't be denied. You just see it everywhere.
You're listening to Guards Down. This is Greg Washington.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Guards Down. I have with me Colin Wells. Colin, how are you?
I'm doing great, Greg. I'm happy to be here, happy to be participating in these important discussions. So thank you for having me.
Man, look, I appreciate you. I'm happy to be here as well. I'm battling through, this fitness and stuff. So I'm just, like you said, I'm just glad to be here, brother.
There you go.
Of course, the show is about raising awareness for PTSD and complicated grief. And so I really like to get in because it's a impactful conversation that could help so many. The goal is always to help save a life when we're talking. So if someone can get some jewels, some tools to put in their toolkit to help them fight, another day, then, this is what I'm all about.
I love it. Well, as the founder of Veterans Walk and Talk and an Army infantry veteran myself, I have complex traumas stemmed from my time in service. A lot of violence that I inflicted. A lot of violence was inflicted on my brothers around me in close contact, and those kinds of things, they rip the fabric of your existence in, and it's hard to sew that piece back on. And then the concept of moral injury, of, injuring what we know to be good and right in life for the sake of a job or a country or a cause, is also the way it kind of gets to be a complex case of, in my case, for traumatic stress. Because if I could reconcile the things that I did in Afghanistan with a righteous cause, it would be a lot easier for me to process them, probably. But when you look at, years and years of suicide and epidemic and war and financial gains being made on the part of people who put us into wars and things like that, it's hard to reconcile the violence that you caused other people in a foreign land with, that kind of justification. So, I've been, Colin Wells, founder of Veterans Walk and Talk. I've been doing it since 2016 with the mission of cannabis and psychedelic assisted peer-to-peer therapy. We have over 300 active members. We have a better success rate of helping PTSD than the VA does, and with our small numbers. But I know that's a bold statement, but I lived at the Combat Trauma Treatment Center for 11 months to no avail. I got nothing out of it but a methadone addiction. And, so that's kind of why I started this process into healing.
Man, you said a mouthful.
I know. I'm all over the place, bro. I'm all over the place.
No, this is great, man. This is great. This is going to be a really good conversation.
Good.
Because just like you, I was an infantry officer. I've been in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so I definitely feel where you're coming from, with all this.
Yeah.
And I want to get into and touch each one of these points because it's valid, right? Mm-hmm. Just human nature, we're not designed to go through as much trauma and grief that, that hell the world throws at us, right? And so I often tend to think about, and I read this book a while back called The Body Keeps the Score. Mm-hmm. And so it's an awesome book. I always like to, to reference it because it talks about not just the trauma that you endure right then and there, but just, that lifelong trauma that you had to endure and deal with. And right. I always like to start out asking about, like your background. So if you could just kind of tell us your background and then, let's yeah.
Absolutely. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, in the entertainment industry. My mom, created a lot of the Animaniacs characters, wrote the film Casper, directs the Groundlings Theater in Hollywood. So that was my upbringing. It was theater and movies and cartoons and comedy. And it was a beautiful upbringing. 17 years old, avid snowboarder, tear my ACL, get introduced to opiates via Vicodin. The opiate really resonated with me, and it made me numb out and feel not the weight of the world anymore so much. And so I used, kind of my privilege to gain more opiates for about 8 years, 8 to 10 years, until in 2007, when I came to a really dark place in my opiate addiction, fentanyl, everything like that, and actually shot myself. This was before the military. I put a 45 long Colt hollow point through my leg when I was really high, and the goal was to get enough sympathy from the people around me so that nobody would question my opiate use anymore. That's, it's taken me a lot of processing to realize that was my motivation behind it, but it truly was, and it worked really well. For the next year, I spent go in and out of rehabs doing really heavy pharmaceutical drugs until I was in a Laughlin casino playing poker and came out too high to drive home to Kingman, Arizona, where I was living at the time. So I pulled my car into a parking lot, and it happened to be a parking lot of an Army recruiter's office. I slept in my car till they opened, and then went in to ask to use the bathroom and signed up for the infantry. From there, literally, I got clean enough to pass a drug test. And funny enough, cannabis was the one thing, like, they didn't mind me having opiates in my system, but cannabis was a big deal to them. So I had to get that out of my system. And then as soon as I did, I just went back on the pills, and I was using right up until they fucking picked me up and brought me to 30th AG in Fort Benning, Georgia. And that's when I kicked again. And I tell people I always fit right in because, as you know, everybody in basic training is, shitting themselves and not sleeping. So I was just like, I fit right through the cracks, man. Nobody even noticed. They just, as long as I got up and did PT, they'd leave me alone and give me more shitty food. So I got better. I really enjoyed being a soldier. I was good at it. It kind of felt like I found my stride a bit. And less than 6 months after completing my infantry school, I was deploying to Afghanistan in summer of 2009. I went to Fort Lewis. I was part of the Stryker Brigade combat team out of 2nd Infantry Division, 4th Battalion, 23rd Infantry Regiment Tomahawks. It's now 2nd Brigade. They reflagged it when we got back because there was the whole kill team and all that stuff. That was all part of my unit. So they, reflagged. The kill team being soldiers that were killing unarmed civilians and keeping trophies and body parts and things like that. It was a pretty ugly scene. So yeah, I went to Afghanistan, and you can interrupt me anytime, Greg, if I'm going off too much, but I went to Afghanistan, went to the Battle of Marja in late 2009, early 2010 with the Marines. We were the only Army infantry unit there. And that was, a lot of intense fighting and firefights and ambushes. I was blown up twice in different ambushes on foot. I had traumatic brain injuries both times. But obviously, you don't speak up really about it. You just get 12 hours of rest and you're back at it. And so that's what I did, and got back to the States. I had blown my ACL again. So, when I got back and my unit was changing the guard and my buddies are ETSing or changing duty stations or anything like that, you're kind of there with a torn ACL on crutches going like, hey, but what about me? And so it was kind of like the perfect storm of trauma, depression, and pain, physical pain, to bring back my addiction tenfold. And so it did. I got out of the Army in 2012 on oxycodone, prazosin for nightmares, which is a blood pressure medication given to veterans in active duty, Wellbutrin, even Adderall and Ambien and Klonopin. So just this crazy cocktail. I moved back to Los Angeles trying to, find my footing in it all with my addiction, still there, still very, very prevalent, and tried to get better. Went to the VA to get help, the West Los Angeles VA. I lived at the substance abuse track for 5 months, the combat trauma treatment track for 6 months, and ended up getting in an argument with my roommate at the time and being forced to leave after 11 months of healing. And I was on methadone because of my opiate addiction, had to be on methadone in order to have a bed there. And so once I was asked to leave that place just on a Saturday night after a traumatizing day with all my stuff put outside the building and nowhere to go, my mom offered to help me because I'd, gotten a little better, but I became, essentially homeless right then and there, and went back to living in the woods, went back on drugs, started ripping off heroin dealers using my infantry training to get massive amounts of heroin, which I shared with no one. I stockpiled and hid like a rat. And my opiate addiction got so bad that I wasn't able to maintain it anymore. And out of necessity and also the universe aligning, a friend of mine brought cannabis over. It'd be the first time I'd had it in a long time. And it helped me for the first time feel like I could get through this addiction. So with that Kickstarter, I started to go down on the methadone regimen that I was on, do more work on myself. Eventually in 2016, I got a job at REI, which is a recreational equipment store where camping, hiking, things like that. And in late 2016, I was hiking a lot and using cannabis and getting really healthy for the first time in years. And so I decided to put the call out to more veterans that, if you have a way you can help me heal, maybe I have a way I can help you heal. So let's go hike and talk about it. So I put out Veterans Walk and Talk in December of 2016. Nobody came for a few months, and I just would hike alone and show up to these trails and do these hikes. And then eventually I met the Beard Brothers, who gave me a bunch of free cannabis medicine to share on my hikes. And so I put that on social media that if you come hike with me, we'll partake in this amazing medicine and you can have it for free and all that stuff. And, kind of like Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Like veterans just were like, oh, so I can hike and get free weed. And so that really brought a flood of veterans to the cause. And so now 4 years later, through Veterans Walk and Talk, I've traveled the country. In 2018, I crossed the country 8 times. I hiked all over Maryland and West Virginia and the South, and I've brought medicine to veterans in all those places illegally, but knowing that it was the right thing to do. And now we have Sacramento, San Diego, and Los Angeles Veterans Walk and Talk chapters. We just opened a San Francisco chapter, and we are focused on legislation and social justice and bringing awareness to these things that really, really, really help, in particular cannabis and psychedelics. I've spoken at, the Senate in Washington, D.C., House hearings on cannabis for veterans. I've driven myself all the way there to do so. I've spoken at local government, city council. I've spoken at the state level of Sacramento in California on behalf of SB 34, State Bill 34. So it's very much a calling for me. Now we're at a place where, like I said, we have like 350, give or take, members of Veterans Walk and Talk, averaging 25 to 30 hikers per event. And I'm in the realm now where I'm giving out and growing my own medicinal and psychedelic mushroom blends to veterans that I feel helps better than anything. Also facilitating DMT, cactus, and heavier mushroom journeys for veterans one-on-one. And I'm a father of 4 and a happy man and a very fulfilled individual.
Man, look, talk about a bathroom break.
Right. I know. I know, man.
Man.
Jump in anytime and be like, dude, are you serious? You said 20 things in a matter of 30 seconds. You got to calm down.
No, that was good, because it was like, it went from, I was dealing with this stuff as a teenager, slept in the parking lot, woke up to get a bathroom break, Army recruit. Yeah. And
I know.
Boom, here I am.
My hero's journey, brother. You know what I'm saying? It's all our journeys are similar in a lot of ways, but they're also very nuanced and different. And that's part of my hero's journey.
Indeed, man. And it sounds like it's been just that, a journey. So with all this being said, the question that I have to ask is, growing up, were you prepared to deal with all of this trauma and grief? Did your family teach you, how to deal with it growing up?
My family taught me to use humor and to be I grew up in the improvisational comedy world, where the number one rule is yes and. If you listen, you agree, and you add to it. So that was kind of my mentality. It's not obviously applicable to everything, but I was taught to compartmentalize and find the light in situations like that, which I did in Afghanistan in the most horrific situations, always, volunteering myself to do the hard jobs, leading with humor, trying to break people's kind of mental, problems with that. That was always my go-to. So I was definitely not sat down and told, like, if something traumatic happens to you, this is how you process it, this is how you deal with it. It was very much more like compartmentalize, find the humor in it, and drive on, which, is a beneficial tool for some things. But, my dad, being as liberal as he is and against a lot of the things, like, I have deep roots in the military through my mom's side. My dad's side is a little different. I definitely feel joining the military alienated me from my father in a lot of ways. It's something that, like, both my mom had an easier time kind of coming to terms with it, but my dad still, they never knew what kind of trauma to prepare me for in that sense, because there's no way they could grasp the fact that I'd be going to war in that sense. So no, I don't think, I'm not sure that it's the cost benefit analysis of teaching children to deal with that kind of trauma and preparing them for it in a direct way is beneficial. However, like, my whole goal is to live fully for my kids, to say, so they can look at me and say, he went through all this stuff, but look at him now, he's thriving. He's a man I want to be. That in and of itself is the best, I think, teaching tool for trauma. Yeah.
Okay. And just to make sure I got the full picture, was your family, what was your, like, ethnic and religious background?
White, no religion. I keep it simple, man. Like, just as you can see, just ethnic. I got Russian, German, Scottish, English, all the whitest ones. And then I had no religion growing up. It was the religion of comedy and taking care of your theater. That was my religion.
Got you. Okay. No, this is good. So the part that I want to start at is the snowboard accident.
Yeah.
So you went skiing, hurt yourself, and they put you on opioids.
Yeah.
Right. And so what was, can walk us through what it felt like for an addiction, right? Because a lot of people think that, it's this thing that grabs a hold of you and you can identify it before it happens.
Right.
That might not be the case.
Yeah, no, I had no clue. I was just an angry, all over the place kind of kid. And looking back, it's kind of like I feel a bit of like just an antenna in the sense of what I do with Veterans Walk and Talk. I'm able to empathize very easily with any individual who comes to me with their traumas and things like that. So I think being a 17, 18-year-old kid, I had those abilities, those feelings of the entire world around me all at once, feeling. And when the opiates hit my system, that shit went away and it quieted all of that. And I didn't care about anyone else's problems and I didn't care about the world so much. And so that kind of misunderstanding was kind of cathartic for a 17, 18-year-old kid who didn't really know about the universe and energy and things like that like I do now. So I think that, and also, preconception to being addicted to things in genetics and in the brain and things like that, all of that plays a factor. But I didn't have any severe childhood trauma or anything like really, triggering event that would give me that kind of like road to addiction. It was just really more of this numbness that I found very comforting. And, I could just kind of be a guy who just wanted to play video games and eat popsicles all day. And I found that to be very relaxing, to be honest. But again, 17, 18 years old, I didn't really know the full gravity of it all because the opiate crisis was just coming ahead and doctors were pushing these things left and right. You could get, 5 refills on your prescription and things like that. There was just no end to it. So,
yeah. Okay. And so I asked that because I want to compare the 17, 18-year-old you going through, trauma and, using opioids and feeling numb to what you went through as a combat veteran.
Right.
And that low point that you got there. Are there any similarities or any... Are there any similarities or any major differences, in those points that we could pick out? The major difference and or similarity is that when I was 17, 18 years old, I didn't know the effects of the opiates. I just knew that the doctor had given them to me and I was supposed to take them. Whereas, coming through my traumas and things like that through the war, through Afghanistan, I was aware of what I was doing to myself and doing it more willingly. So it was more of like 17-year-old Colin numbing out on opiates and playing video games is detrimental and not good, but it's also very ignorant. When I came through Afghanistan and the combat and everything and those traumas, it was like my default mode in my brain was to use those traumas to go back to being numb rather than facing them head on in order to feel them fully and
process them and let them go in my past. I hope that makes a little sense, but the long and short of it is, growing up in America is tough. Growing up anywhere, being a human being growing up is tough. And those things come with its own challenges. But when you join the infantry and you go to war and you go to Afghanistan and you fight these people and you do these kinds of things, that is kind of like a choice in a lot of ways. It's something that, I signed up to do, and that was part of my fabric at the time. Mm-hmm. But my ability to deal with trauma and deal with the problems that I faced in combat were just as naive as they were when I was 17, 18 years old. The difference being the pharmaceuticals, I had full knowledge on what I was getting myself into being older, whereas when I was younger, I didn't really understand.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you mentioned the point of using the trauma to go back to being a numb, right? Having it as an excuse to say, I'm going to do this because, I want to numb out. Why didn't you want to feel?
I didn't want to feel because I always felt anxious all the time, and I felt very misguided and angry and selfish. And I recognized that I was selfish in my addiction and in my behavior. And the more I used drugs, the less selfish I felt, because I was just numb and all over. So it was two parts. It was like, I want to escape my addiction, but I also want to escape with my addiction, if that makes sense. It was like, I felt too much all the time, and I didn't have any grasp on how to process it. And instead of learning ways to process the feelings I was having, I just found this quick fix that eventually, anyone knows who takes opiates, it's fine at first. And then you're just continually chasing that, and that becomes the addiction, is the chase. So I wanted to not feel because I was scared of what I was feeling, is the short answer.
Yeah. And so when you say the chase, meaning that your tolerance for it grew. And so as your tolerance grew, you tried to take more to get that high or that feeling. Yes,
sir. That is correct. I got to the point where I was putting fentanyl patches in my cheeks and, getting 3 days of fentanyl all at, in about 20, 25 minutes, overdosing, taking 10 to 20 Oxycontins a day, 50 Vicodin I would take some days, and some days just all at once. The Tylenol and that alone wreaks havoc on your body. I mean, I was really, really bad or good, depending on, I was great at being an addict. I got what I needed, man. So, but it was bad for me.
I got you. Man, well, look, I really just thank you for opening up and sharing, this shit is insightful as I don't know what, for me.
Appreciate that.
For someone out there as well. What I want to touch on is coping, right? So I know we're going to get into the cannabis and the psychedelics, right? We'll get into that in a minute. But when it came to coping, right, talk about some of the unhealthy habits that you had and some of the healthier ones that you had to either relearn or train yourself to do.
Well, the unhealthy habits was to numb out for sure, and just not look at what I was feeling, not look at what traumatized me, to just let it kind of, it is what it is. But, healthy coping mechanism that I definitely had and still hold on to was my humor and my listening abilities. That was really, once I started just listening to other people and realizing that, no one person had all the answers that I was seeking. It was more of a community of answers that I could garner from in just being a human and relating to human nature. So, the infantry, it's, you lose some guys in an IED blast. You maybe have a chaplain come over to your lunch table and be like, hey, are you guys okay? And then that's pretty much it. There's no processing. There's no grief counseling. There's no, are you okay? Or do you need some time? Do you want to rest? There's none of that. It's get back to work, which, is healthy to a certain extent to drive on and find the keep going in your heart, and to tap into that and to know that you're capable of experiencing profound life-altering moral injury and trauma, and drive on immediately. That is an empowering tool as well. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last few years doing the work I do is that time is yours, time is mine, time is meaningless in a lot of ways. If you tell me, Greg, that you want me to be on a podcast with you at 9 a.m. in the morning, that's a time that we can both respect and meet. But what I mean more poetically, if you will, is that, all you have is now, right now, where you're seated, where your moment is, where your thoughts are. The past, how it affects you in a growth sense and all this is very important, but it's also not who we are now. Veterans in particular are taught to always be proud of their service, to hold on to their service, to wear the shirts and the hats all the time everywhere we go, to make sure people are reminded of this. And if you serve for 40 years, that is very much your identity. If you're someone like me who served for 4 years, it is not my identity anymore. It's something that I did. So I always tell veterans, don't go full veteran. You never go full veteran. Like I just, I hope that answered your question, man.
No, it really did. Because, like it's a gift and a curse, like you said, being in the military when you're going through something, and the tempo is so high within the unit that it doesn't give you time to process it, right? Because you're always having to accomplish the next mission or objective or, do whatever. And so it's constantly keeping yourself busy. And then the other part that you were talking about is people get so wrapped up in I'm Sergeant such and such, or I'm Officer such and such, or, I'm this. And they lose sight or forget that at the end of the day and at the end of your service, right, when you got to hang the uniform up, you're still Colin Wells. I'm still Greg Washington. And so you have to come to terms with the issues that you dealt along the way in being in the military, right? So where you might have compartmentalized and put that combat experience, that trauma, that grief up on the shelf, at some point you have to deal with it and process it. It's kind of like what it sounds like, when you speak on it. And I definitely relate to the ideal of time, living in the now, right? Because I've had to battle that myself. So like a lot of the stuff that you're saying, brother, I get like completely. Yeah.
Especially veterans, because like so many of us have trouble, being loving with our children or being good husbands or engaged human beings in our community. And a lot of that has to do with not only looking in the past, but always looking at what's next. What's the next thing I have to do? This is a very common issue with veterans. And the funny thing is, a lot of times veterans will be saying it out loud. Like, all I do is I'm on my phone. It's always the next thing. It's always, I can never just relax. I can never just be in the moment. And I'm just looking, I'm like, you're saying it. You're saying your remedies out loud. You're saying the things you need to do to make your life improved out loud. And yet you don't hear them. So you're 100% right. Grounding yourself in the moment is one of the best things, especially combat veterans, can do for themselves.
Yeah. Okay. And so, it made me ask the question of, why did you choose the infantry?
The infantry chose me, man. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, sorry, I kicked my light. I was very high and on a lot of drugs when I joined the Army. I did well enough on the ASVAB. I could have had other jobs probably, but I just wanted it quick. I wanted to get away. I wanted things to change in my immediate circle. So I was like, what's the quickest, easiest route? And how do I get to shoot machine guns? And they were like, all right, infantry, we got another one. Send him over. So that's how the infantry. Yeah, it wasn't premeditated. I wasn't one of those guys that had a plan for joining or anything. It was really just flying by the seat of my pants.
Gotcha. Did basic training help you during that time frame?
Fuck yeah. Basic training was incredible. Basic training was the hardest thing I've done in a long time. Like, my unit trained me harder and better. Once I got to my unit, anybody that knows that, that has been in the military knows, you learn a lot in basic and in AIT, but you do the hard training when you get to your unit. However, man, like I hadn't laughed so hard in my life, and I grew up in the comedy world, than I did in basic training. And those guys lifting one another up, accomplishing the goals and the duties of the day. We had, a guy in our platoon who basically, I don't know how he even got there, but he could barely dress himself, and just very disabled in so many ways. And just seeing these guys from different walks of life waking up early to make sure he was okay, to make sure he was in formation, and then going and doing incredibly difficult tasks together, like live fire, like stress shoots, and these obstacle courses and things like that. Man, yeah, it was empowering and fun and enlightening, and especially looking back, because I didn't really know in the moment how impactful it was, but looking back, that was the start of a long journey for me. And so, yeah, basic training had a very good impact on me. Definitely.
Yeah. No, I like how you said that, because you can take some of the tools that you learned in the military and apply them to life after the military.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Being able to take that skill set and apply it, no matter what your MOS is, I think is very valuable. You just have to know what tools you have to use to help yourself, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. It's like anything else, you take the good and learn from the bad.
Indeed. Okay. I want to touch on your combat experience, but we don't have to go into detail about it.
That's all right. I'm an open book, so anything you want to ask, go ahead.
Okay. So this is all around signs that you're dealing with trauma and grief. And so throughout your life experience, from the snowboarding incident to your combat experience, and then, getting out and having to be homeless and fend for yourself, along the way, what were the signs, thoughts, feelings, actions that were flags or triggers that let you know that you were dealing with some shit?
Well, my year in Afghanistan was, a lot of times veterans get into trouble comparing and one-upping one another. So that disclaimer at the start of this, okay? But my year in Afghanistan, 2009 to 2010, during the surge of troops and everything, was remarkably violent. We experienced a lot of loss. My sister battalion, 117, lost, I think, around 23 people in a matter of a few months due to poor leadership and really just not knowing what they were getting themselves into, what we were all getting ourselves into. But the signs and it you don't really know at the moment. Like when I was in the throes of my trauma back from Afghanistan, back stateside, in the year or so after I got back, you remember the blood on your hands. You remember the blood on your uniform. You see it, it's there. You're interacting in it. You're cleaning up the body parts of your dead friends and all that stuff. And in the moment, it's almost like, this is my job. This is what I do. I'm going to continue to do this so that the 18 and 19-year-old privates over there don't have to, because they're in shell shock just looking at them. And so I'm going to keep doing these things. But then what it is for me and many other veterans was that year after getting back from Afghanistan, standing in front of a mirror, washing my hands in warm water, and then all of a sudden being triggered back to the warmth of the blood on my uniform and the warmth of the surroundings and the feelings of the droplets on me, and having to give my uniform over to biohazard bags when I got back. And those things would freeze me in time. And I remember very distinctly having to keep my bathroom very, very, because that's where I would go. I had to keep everything in its right place, because if things were moved out of place, I couldn't figure out if I was in my memories or in the present moment. So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that when I was in those violent moments, I didn't really realize what it was doing to me. I didn't realize that it was this impactful. I didn't know. But looking back, you realize that a lot of these things very much were impactful. Yeah. So the signs are hard to see in the moment is what I'm trying to say.
No, I'm with you. Yeah. The signs are definitely hard to see, especially when you're in it. It's more so of a looking back.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? And so if you can give yourself that honest self-assessment, after the moment has passed, to look back and say, okay, I dealt with something, and that it wasn't right, then that's where the flag should come in for you to be like, all right, yeah, I'm dealing with something out of the ordinary.
Right.
When you spoke about the bathroom, right, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
For me, I would stand in front of a mirror and I would see my ghost. I wouldn't even see myself. Mm-hmm. And it was always, why weren't you there to save me or to help me? Why didn't you do more?
Right.
So, that guilty conscience, like plays on you heavy, and reliving these things over and over in your mind to the point where you don't know what's real and what's fake. Like you said, you had to create these little nuances, almost like OCD, to be right. Like, okay, if I'm dreaming, then it shouldn't look like this. If I'm awake, it should look a certain way because I laid it out like this.
Right. Exactly.
And, that definitely makes sense. And I connect with that on a very deep level. And I remember having to come to Jesus moment and tell myself that, okay, look, I'm here. Would my friends, my loved ones that I lost, would they really want me to live in guilt and in shame and then this, or is there something more?
100%. That is exactly, thank you for saying that, because that is something that has pulled me out of those moments and helped me to process in so many ways. You're absolutely 100% right. Nobody, survivor's guilt, none of the things, nobody that I lost in Afghanistan or to suicide since would want to see me miserable and just holding on to that stuff. They would want me to be thriving and living on their behalf. You're 100% right. Thank you for saying that. It's true.
Indeed. Okay. Let's talk about support.
Okay.
Right. When you were going through, what kind of support did you want for yourself? And this is just looking back, right? Mm-hmm. How could you have helped yourself better? Or,
well, in regards to the trauma and substance abuse treatment I was receiving, if I could go back to the times I was living at the VA and trying to get through that, I would say that, because a lot of the things I did was just to keep the bed and to keep my home at the VA, to keep that room. And I would say to myself, doing things, taking methadone, taking prescriptions, showing up to this or that doesn't really benefit you in order to keep a bed is not going to heal you. You need to do these things in order to heal yourself. So, I wish that every veteran could know that not every veteran is going to heal in the same way. There's no one avenue of approach for PTSD that works for every single service member. It is so nuanced and so complex in its intricacies and everything. So that's something that I'm very passionate about now, offering one-on-one help and all that stuff, is that everything that I do for veterans is tailored to the veteran's need. And looking at the VA and how much funding it gets, I remember living there and we would be having brown water in our sinks and cockroaches and, not enough staff to help us with our problems and things like that. Yet they were getting grants to put in new toilet paper dispensers and things like that. And weird money that would go to these weird things that nobody needed or was asking for, based on a board members meeting they had last year, and the money's finally showing up, and the board members agreed to put it towards the toilet paper dispensers. So it has to go there, even if we're swimming in brown water and cockroaches. And then all that stuff, looking back, sometimes I think maybe that's why they kicked me out so easily, because I was starting to be like, why is this? What is this? Why are you doing this to us? And so that's something, I would want to tell younger Colin, who was trying to heal himself, is that there's no one way to heal. And also it's okay to ask the questions you're asking, because I was so scared of losing my bed all the time. Was the biggest fear. And when it finally happened, it was like, I still deal with a lot of the trauma from that night, from losing my bed. And I have a lot of trouble going to the VA. I still have a lot of trust issues that come bubbling up sometimes, because those fears of losing my bed at the VA became a reality that night. And that is kind of in and of it, like the fears, if I had just had the fears and graduated from the program and moved on and done all that I do, that's one thing. But that fear I had the entire 11 months of living at the VA of losing my bed, I lose everything. I'll lose my time with my son. I'll lose all the ground I've gained. I'll lose everything. And then that fear coming to fruition that night over something so simple as a verbal argument with my roommate, that that validated a lot of fears and trust issues for me that I still deal with today. And in a lot of ways, I let my mental health is very strong, but my physical health suffers because of my issues with the VA. I'm scared to go there. I make it hard on myself. I don't want to get seen. And so I let things go, and I let things get worse. And so I hope you can that answer down.
yeah. No, that did. And so, when to kind of sum it, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to, the support that you have for yourself, right? It sounds like you're saying you got to heal with a purpose, not just to benefit yourself. So you do these programs, you go on this journey of healing because that is your actual purpose, not because you're just trying to keep a bed, right? Or keep your
right. Amen.
Once you accept that you want to get better, that's when your journey in the healing really starts. Absolutely.
And then the flip side to that is when you're looking back, it's all part of it. It's all the journey. It's all part of it. All that suffering, all that angst, all that fear brought me to who I am today. And who I am today is a man I've always dreamt of being. And that is what matters.
Correct. So let's talk about support from the outside, right? Help from others. Looking back, what kind of help would you have wanted from other people?
Psychedelics, cannabis. They're not cure-alls, but they definitely give you a kickstart. The whole idea of methadone maintenance, of opiate addiction maintenance is lost on me. Methadone did help me a lot, but it only helped me once I got real about a plan to get off it. I saw these veterans that would come into the methadone clinic and 75, 85 years old, barely walking to get their month's worth of methadone and that's methadone maintenance. So that is a big red flag looking back for me. I would have liked more, psychedelics are kind of this huge wave that comes over you. And then that calm in between the next wave is the healing. And then you have another wave if you want it, or you can get out of the ocean for a bit. And I would have welcomed that rather than just maintaining an addiction to another pharmaceutical or another thing like that, when maintenance isn't healing. Healing is healing. Healing is constant. Healing is all the time. I'm healing right now. I'm healing when I'm sleeping. I'm always in the process of healing. So I would have really welcomed more outside points of view, more, like I said before, more nuanced avenues of healing. The VA is faced with a suicide epidemic, the likes of which is just almost unspeakable, the amount of veterans we've lost to suicide compared to our actions in combat. And for them to just, have this one-track mentality on how to do it all for veterans is very sloppy and irresponsible. I think that the VA that I went to, in order to get funding, they would only, let in certain veterans who they thought fit the criteria. A 15% success rate was something that they were proud of when, we're dying in numbers. So I lost you. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. I would have liked more, just more thought going into each individual case. Come talk to me, come learn what I'm into, what is exactly that I've gone through. Don't just make me a number. Don't just make me another statistic for you to gain funding for your programs, things like that.
All right. So that part that you were saying, is good. So, this opioid maintenance versus being introduced to other alternatives, right? To be able to have different options, right? Because like you said, it's not a cookie cutter, one size fit all that helps people. And so I'm glad you spoke on that.
Thank you.
Right. And so let's get into cannabis. Let's get into cannabis and psychedelics because I really want to hear your thoughts behind like the properties, of cannabis versus CBD. And then I definitely want to hear, the science behind the psychedelics because I haven't tried it. I'm still doing my research, so it's still out on it, and so I want to hear from subject matter experts in those fields because you did say you grow, right?
Yeah, I grow psychedelic and medicinal mushrooms, lion's mane, reishi. What else am I growing? Oyster mushrooms, and then also several varieties of the cubensis mushroom. I've taken mushrooms this morning. I took psychoactive psychedelic mushrooms in my microdose this morning with my morning coffee. So you're witnessing a man who has eaten mushrooms today. I'm not jumping off the ceiling and, banging my head against the wall. Not visibly. I do it off camera. But no, I'm kidding. But, so yeah, I mean, cannabis, the fact of the matter is, the monetization of wellness, the bought and sold health, of mental health treatment in this country has brought us to the precipice of pharmacological and opiate, crisis. These are not things meant to help you or heal you. These are things meant to maintain you, like we talked about. And that is not a way to heal from complex trauma. Complex trauma, which we've tried to do with all these, and if veterans have been healed by these things, that's great. I don't want to discount it, but augmented reality and virtual reality, and let us recreate the fucking explosion you went to so you can just, see it again and then get out and process it. It's psychedelics are all of these things wrapped into one. Veterans oftentimes will come to me seeking a psychedelic experience. And this is, we can get into the weeds of it, but this is what scares me about the future of psychedelics is that it's not a 1 hour, doctor patient type of experience. It's not something that's going to be given to you and then you're going to go home and be the father you've always wanted to be and be it's more about you take these journeys, you experience everything that the journey has to show you, positive, negative, profound, minute, all these things. And then you have to integrate it into your lifestyle. You have to realize that we are present in the moment and the moment is all we have and that we are all connected and all these beautiful things, but you have to put them into play, especially as veterans. So, a lot of the prep work and aftercare work of the psychedelic journey is as profound and important as the actual journey in and of itself. Now, that being said, cannabis, I live in California. I'm not sure where you are, Greg, but I live in California, which is the, cannabis mecca of the country, right? It's supposed to be where, everything is going on with it. But that in and of itself has been monetized and kind of convoluted, especially for medical patients. So cannabis, in my opinion, is a gateway drug. It's a gateway to healing. It's a gateway to finding yourself, finding your footing. But it's not a gateway to the things we've been taught, a gateway to more illicit drugs, harder drugs, things like that. What cannabis is for me now, personally, is an integration tool and a recreational tool. Cannabis was the first substance that brought me out of my addiction. I love cannabis with all my heart and soul. Everything about it, from seed to sow to everything. I love the plant. My use of it,
Cannabis.
the first 2 years of Veterans Walk and Talk was every day, all day, morning, noon, and night. Wake up, I'm in pain. But it's not. When you say it like that, it's not an addiction in the sense of these other things that were detrimental, that were keeping me down. Cannabis lifted me up for all that time. Once I got into psychedelic use, and in particular, heavier journeys with, cactus and psilocybin, DMT as well, was very profound for me. My use of cannabis, I hardly use it anymore. It's something that is more of an afterthought, something that I will do in a social setting with friends and things like that. But psychedelics really were the things that opened me up to the potential of more, it's hard. I'm an open book about these things, but keep in mind, do your own research and learn from the people who came before people like myself. But my take on it, Greg, is, especially with cactus journeys and these heavier journeys, is that all realities play themselves out. Everything, there's a reality, there's a fabric, there's a mycelium web somewhere where I never got over my addiction, where I'm still that man, I'm still that selfish person. There's a dimension where I never joined the army. There's a dimension where infinite. And these psychedelic modalities, especially in the heavier doses, allow you to journey to these places, to these realities where this thing played out and that thing played out, and literally live it and feel and see exactly how, if I were to bring this back to my reality and make these choices, how it would affect me and the people around me. And so that is my personal psychedelic, sorry, the dogs are barking. That is my personal psychedelic experience. It allows me to play out infinite scenarios sorry, the dogs distracted me. Play out infinite scenarios in order to let them have their day and learn that I'm capable of anything.
Yeah.
Now, I know that does sound a little hippy dippy and, a little bit out there, but
no, I'm with you, right?
Good.
And it's a lack of a better word, you almost have to lose your mind in order to save yourself.
You got to change your mind.
Right, change your mind. And that's a better way of putting it. And so understanding that there are infinite timelines, right, of decisions that are being made in, parallel universes. You're on this one. This is your
right.
time. And so what you feel, what you go through, you have to live it and walk it, right?
Well said.
To be connected and to know that you're walking in your path and your purpose. So I get you. I get you when you say that, because I've been there. And for me, I had to go there like the hard way, because my drug of choice was alcohol, right? And so I couldn't find answers at the bottom of a liquor bottle. I couldn't go to sleep. And when I did go to sleep, it was nightmares. So for me, it was like insomnia.
Right.
So to go through all of these different experiences and still not have any gratification. And it wasn't until I had this very terrifying sleep paralysis, so night terror, right?
Horrible.
That you seen Groundhog Day?
Of course, love that movie.
Man, I felt like I was reliving this Groundhog Day over and over and over until I just accepted, right, where I was at in life. And so it wasn't until, you know, I accepted where I was at that I was able to move forward. And so, you know, you speaking on it reminded me of that feeling and where I was at. So I appreciate you, you know, you sharing and opening up.
Thank you.
I want to get into, right, kind of like the science of it. So for the different feelings that you have with PTSD or with grief, I want to know, how can cannabis help and how can psychedelics help? So if I am dealing with depression, or if I am dealing with anger issues, or if I can't eat or I can't sleep or I'm moody, which one should I take? What's going to help? What's going to be beneficial? You know, or which one do I not take?
Right. I always tell, I think the best thing to start with is a microdosing regimen of psilocybin mushrooms. That, I feel, is the groundwork that's being laid in front of you to change the chemistry of your body and prepare yourself in ways to do further journeying on these modalities. But as far as the science goes, and again, I'm not a doctor. I call myself a citizen scientist. I have a lot of fun doing what I do, and I like to learn, and I'm capable and everything, but I am definitely not a doctor. But from the things that I've learned and the things that I've seen firsthand and the things that I've felt firsthand, as far as trauma goes with psychedelics, the science behind the microdosing movement of psilocybin and stacking them with nootropic elements like matcha and kava and cordyceps and lion's mane and these types of things is that our traumas are rooted in our memory. And our memory is triggered by certain things, and our memory then sends signals throughout our body to react a certain way, whether it be sleep paralysis or tearful or anger or anything like that. So the science behind psychedelics, which again was gutted by the war on drugs in 1970 and Richard Nixon, when we were making great strides in our mental health in regards to psychedelics, we're just starting to kind of circle back and get to these amazing revelations. But neurogenesis, the idea of building new cells within your body to empower healing, is something that psilocybin in particular is being shown to do really well on a more consistent basis, because microdosing, you're taking it every day. So you're changing your gut, you're changing the biome of your gut, you're changing the cells in your gut. The gut is reinvigorating neurons and cells and sending them up to your brain and recycling the old ones. And so a lot of times veterans, people with severe complex trauma, like I said before, the droplets on my arm, the water, the warmth of everything, you still go there. It's still, but then it's almost like it's just the memory has been retrained to be, don't freeze, don't clam up, don't go do self-harm. Instead, realize you're okay. Life's okay. Life moves on. You're still in this body. This body needs you. This body needs the mind, body, and spirit to be aligned in order for us to continue. And then you're just kind of like, peace and love to the ones I lost. I will live fully for them. So that's the long and short basic science behind what psychedelics I've seen personally do for veterans. Now you can go do your own research. The Johns Hopkins study, I always have trouble saying that. Johns Hopkins study on microdosing. There's a Marine study on microdosing. Yes, the Marines 2019 did a study on microdosing LSD and mushrooms and things like that. That's very profound. So then you start doing heavier doses. For me, it was Wachuma, San Pedro cactus, which is, a very beautiful and incredible cactus plant. Not illegal to grow, but illegal to harvest. Doing that it reset almost every last inch of my inside, my outside, everything. It was just like, I remember being in the woods. I was alone. I took the cactus and I was in the woods for about 12 hours of, Greg, mind melting. Just, I could touch a tree and I could download everything that tree ever saw, from sapling to how big it was, every hiker that peed on it, every piece of trash thrown under it, every tear shed under it, everything. And then at one point, I remember standing on top of a rock and screaming out as loud as I could the word Afghanistan, just over and over. And I could see black, spirals coming out of my mouth and being pierced by the trees around them, and just dissolving this entire sense and this guilt and this horror I was holding on to for so long. And, that is a poetic that is your mind explaining it to the body. But what's happening to the body is absolutely that. It's a purging of those cells that are holding on to that source memory, that are holding on to the moment where my buddies were bleeding out, or the moment I got the phone call that, a friend of mine had murdered himself and his entire family since coming back from Afghanistan. All these profoundly traumatic moments that just come flooding. Your body is cycling them. And it's not that you dissolve the memory completely. It's just that you accept the memory as exactly what it is, a memory. It doesn't need to be your existence in the moment anymore. You don't have to feel guilty on other people's behalf. You don't have to live in sorrow on other people's behalf because they're not here anymore, like we spoke about. You, Greg, I can tell already, have a very powerful mind, and you know how to tap into your inner self in ways that psychedelics will probably just expound on. But a lot of people don't have that, and don't have that ability to know, I'm going to stare into the mirror 20 nights in a row and feel completely paralyzed and see the ghost of myself, and then finally come to a realization of being in the moment is what matters. Some of us need that kind of kickstart and that overall cycling of cells. And that's kind of what psychedelics provide.
I got you. No, that's a great explanation. You walk through it. Especially the tree example, like that made sense, from seed to how tall it was going to be to, like you said, every person that pissed on it or cried underneath it, like that touched home, because it was like, I get what you're saying. And right. To be that in tune with yourself to the point where you can process your trauma and what you're going through, on that metaphoric level, like I get it completely. For those that are out there that are listening, right, what warnings would you give them as far as trying cannabis or psychedelics? You've already said do your research about what they are and what they're used for, right? But what are the warnings that you would give?
Thank you for asking that question, because a lot of people are always want to know the good things and everything. The warnings are cannabis is pretty harmless. You can get too high and eat too much of an edible and you'll sleep it off. You might throw it up or things like that. But cannabis is pretty good. The warnings for cannabis in particular are that you don't want to be escaping from every moment. You don't want to be hitting high THC dabs or bong loads in order to, have to deal with your existence. That isn't healing. That is, again, maintenance. So if you're looking to heal yourself with cannabis, again, you have to commit to it, and you have to realize that your body has an endocannabinoid system that is developed to respond to that plant. But if you're overloading yourself with it, it can be just as harmful as anything else you do in life. You work out too much, you have too much sex, you have anything that is done too much can be detrimental. So what I recommend for cannabis is, if you're a veteran out there looking to heal with cannabis, don't go and get the highest, best bud you can. Save that for when you're hanging with your friends and you want to have a good time and bring out the good stuff and have a great time. It's safe and effective, and you can, your kid breaks his arm while you're smoking cannabis. You're not going to be a drunk and like, I can't. You'll be able to deal with it. That is a beautiful thing. But if you're looking to heal yourself with cannabis, you need to realize what it is that is healing you. It's not the cannabis, it's you. You are the medicine. You are the one capable of building new cells. You are the one who can put your body into homeostasis, whether it be through cannabis, meditation, breathwork, psychedelics, anything like this, in order to empower your body to heal what is wrong with you. So you need to look into like anything else, like a doctor would do for you. Every 4 hours, take your cannabis tincture or your capsule, so that you are empowering your body to constantly be in a state of homeostasis. If this is homeostasis right here, this between my two arms here, and this is the prime zone of healing for a human being. If you hit a bong load, you might spike in and out of that, right? So you might be in it for a minute, and you're like, and then you come back down and then you're out of it. So what you want to do is find this. So if you have to take it every 4 hours in order to stay within the homeostasis realm, so be it. That is the best healing tool with cannabis I've found. Tinctures, Rick Simpson oil. Again, if you're having chronic pain, cancer, any of these really, really serious, like life-threatening issues, mental health is life-threatening, then you may need more, and you may need to expound on that. Healing cancer with cannabis, most times it's a lot of Rick Simpson oil throughout, the day, things like that. With psychedelics, the warnings I would give is that it's not a fix-all, it's not a cure-all, it's not a one and done. In order to do a psilocybin journey, psilocybin, let's just say, is the safest psychoactive substance on the planet. Safer than anything else. It is the safest, proven to be almost equally as good for you. I mean, it's just not bad for you in any sense. Cannabis, you're inhaling smoke, all these different things. Psilocybin has been shown to be the least harmful. So that is a good place to start. But it's not going to fix everything for you. As I said before, integration of what these things tell you when you're journeying with them is what heals you. You are the medicine. You are the one who heals yourself. No one medicine will do it for you. So the warnings I have for psychedelics are: find someone like myself or any of the amazing people out there that are speaking up more and more about these things to guide you. Let them guide you. Having a guide in especially larger journeys is imperative. Now, guys like me who just see an avenue of approach and take it, that worked for me. And I have since become a guide, and I seek guides and stuff like that. But when I did my cactus, it was the autumnal equinox. I looked at the cactus. It told me to make it into medicine. And so I did. And I went out in the woods and I came back a completely changed man. So the warnings, but also you have to, psychedelics, they open you up to a potential of more, a realm of existence that is more, that is a sense of, everything around you. There's so much going on that we can barely process in our flesh bodies. These things help you tap into them. So you need to be ready for what it shows you. You need to understand that, there's this whole mentality of, I don't want to have a bad trip or things like that. Well, a bad trip to me is someone who didn't prepare themselves, who didn't have the right set and setting, who probably needed a bad trip, to be honest. Sometimes the bad trips are the best and the most impactful. So the warnings are: source it responsibly and find a guide and do your own research. The one of the things that drives me crazy about how mental health and veterans are treated in this country is, again, like we talked about, this cookie cutter aspect to it. What works for this will work for them. It's not like that. It's nuanced. Yeah. And if professionals aren't going to do it for you, you need to do it for yourself. So research and learn about them. That's the best thing you can do.
Okay. So source it, right?
Responsibly. Source it responsibly.
Find a guide and also do your research, right? And use it responsibly. I like that you definitely said the sourcing part. So understanding that, growing cannabis or even psychedelics is just like, any other plant, right? What you put into it is, that's my son. He's the only one that can get through to me during,
No worries. If you got to take it, let me know.
No, we're good. Okay. So sourcing it, right? Just like any plant, it is what you use to grow it is essentially what'll come out in the plant. And so knowing that there are some great growers out there, and then there are some that are not so great, you got to understand where you're getting your cannabis or your psychedelics from, because you want to have natural, the least amount of impurities of what you're putting into your body, right? So I'm glad you touched on the sourcing part of it. I'm also glad that you touched on the guide, right? Not to be trying these things alone, because you need to make sure that you're in a proper setting to make sure you're safe and have someone that will help make sure you're safe.
Right. And not just that, but like also SSRIs, prescription drugs, things that you're taking outside, they can have adverse interactions with these things because it's a brain change, like I said. So those are all things you need to look into as well. You need to understand the interactions and things like that. That is a fair warning as well. The guides can help with that.
Yeah. And the last part, is definitely do your homework, your research on it, to see if that's right for you. Okay. Now, I'm glad we touched on the cannabis and psychedelic aspect of it, because, that gets into some helpful tools, right, that a person can research and look for themselves, especially if you're in states that are legal. Right. And so that's a good part. And so for people that aren't in states that are legal, what are your thoughts on CBD?
I think CBD, if you're truly getting good sourced CBD with high terpene content and high, well-grown CBD, and you're taking it every 4 hours or as you need it, then it can be very, very, very helpful. I love CBD. I love it. The problem is that it's being put into pillowcases and Coca-Cola and all this shit. That's where I get a problem with CBD. We rushed it to legality. We rushed it to market, and it's getting sold at 7-Elevens and put in every pet food and all these things. And people are able to say, it used to be hemp seed oil. Now I call it CBD because it has a little bit of CBD in it and things like that. I have a little bit of saltiness when it comes to CBD, rightly so. a really good film that I'm actually in is called CBD Nation. You can find it on any platform. Goes into the science behind everything that it can do, and not just CBD, but other cannabinoids. CBG is another one, which is kind of the precursor to all cannabinoids that is getting a lot of attention right now. CBN is a very good cannabinoid that veterans use for sleep. It's very sedating. Delta 8 THC, which again, it's all about where you get these things and who you're getting them from. If you're getting your CBD at Walgreens or at 7-Eleven, you're most likely not getting the full range of healing that you're looking to get out of it. But you could grow 1 or 2 plants in your backyard, harvest those and put it into some medium chain triglyceride oil, and with some soy lecithin, boil it down, make your own tincture. And next thing you know, you're feeling incredible within a week or 2. So yeah, I think CBD is an amazing healing tool, but you can't just trust what you're being told by news sources and movies and things like that. You have to look into it for yourself if you're going to try to heal with these things, because it's just so convoluted at this time.
Right. And so I love hearing the science behind it, because it's beautiful. Right. And so, when you talk about growing it and then, breaking it down, it's all about how it enters into the body and how the body absorbs it the fastest way. Right. Right. And so being able to connect it to the active agent so that it gets into the bloodstream faster, the worse, the better off you are in how you use it and how much you need to use. Right. I appreciate you sharing it and saying that. Okay, this next question is a tough subject, right? Okay. So it's all about making amends. So knowing that we're going down this journey and that old cliche saying, hurt people, right? Along your process, have you hurt people along the way, and how did you make amends?
I definitely hurt a lot of people. I hurt friends. I hurt my family. I stole money from my mother, thousands and thousands of dollars in the throes of my addiction. I have an ex-wife and a firstborn son who lives in North Carolina, who I'm very much kept at distance from still because of the behavior that I exhibited during my addiction. Again, nothing violent, nothing, just more like just very drugged, and that is enough. And then I'm still, battling the fact that my ex-wife views what I do now as still drug use. So that is, this whole stigma that we're trying to erase and get better in this country. But yeah, I hurt people, man. And I definitely hurt people. And I have tried to make amends with certain people. You say the right words. But like, for instance, with my mother, I have made amends with her. Things are better than they've ever been between us. And it was never one conversation. It was never one going to her hat in hand and making the apologies and saying, I'll be better, I'll do better. It was just literally doing better and being better every single day, day in and day out, and changing the narrative of the man I was when I was using, and showing up to when I said I would, or taking care of her during the COVID quarantine, being a father to the children I am in a true sense, not in just where I'm going to her going, I'm going to be a good dad, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Just living my truth is the best way I've been able to make amends to the ones I've hurt. And some of the people that I hurt during my addiction don't care and have no desire to be back in my life. And that is something I accept, and that's okay, because I'm here and now in this moment. but the ones that do see me living fully, that has been the best way to make amends, just living my truth. Yeah.
No, and I am so glad that you shared that part, because a lot of people think that folks have to forgive you. If I say, I'm sorry, I have to get this forgiveness from you.
Right.
And forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. Right. Yeah. And so, when you spoke about living your truth, I mean, that part, that's powerful, man. I got chills listening to you, because it was like, okay, look, I know I messed up. I am coming before you humble. I apologize. I'm not just going to tell you I'm sorry. I'm going to show you that I'm sorry by living and changing the narrative of that man I used to be. And some people, right, we've hurt to the point where, they're done and they wash their hands, and that's okay, right? But that still doesn't change the fact that you are who you said you're going to be.
Right.
And so, man, I appreciate you saying that and sharing it, because it just validates, right, that you're not your past. Mm-hmm. And whether people accept you or not, you still get to walk that path of healing and being, a better person. So, man, thank you so much for saying that, for real.
Thank you. We're simpatico, man. I hope we get together someday.
Look, we will, because I was going to mention it, because you talk about the Veterans Walk and Talk. And so I'm doing a walk from Mount Bayou, Mississippi, because that's where my dad family is from. I'm walking through the South, up the East Coast to the African American Museum in DC, and then on up to West Point and upstate New York. And so I'm calling on veterans. I'm calling on people that are dealing with trauma and grief, with depression and suicide, to come walk with me, right? And just make it, a movement. And so the reason why I'm starting in Mount Bayou, Mississippi, is because I believe that there is more than just pain and suffering in our heritage, right? And so Mount Bayou, Mississippi is one of the first official Black towns in the U.S. Okay. A newly freed slave was allowed to purchase his 800-acre swamp. And his mantra to the other newly freed slaves were, if you could do it for your master, you could do it for yourself, right? Wow. And I'm not talking about slavery, but what I am talking about is that internal fortitude, that grit that a person has to have, that work that a person has to put in to save themselves. So if they could work from sun up to sundown as a slave, you could work from sun up to sundown for yourself, right? And especially along this healing of journey, or this journey of healing that we all have to go through. And so, I'm walking because I want to honor my two best friends, Scotty Pace and Emily Perez, who went to West Point with me, and they were killed in OIF. And I want this to be a part of, of my healing journey, and to be there to help others along the way. And so, man, I hope we get a chance to connect, and, you can come walk with me, or I'll come walk with you. And I think it'd be beautiful, man, to definitely connect.
I love, that is beautiful. All of the above. Yes. And all the thought that you're putting into everything about this, just, make sure you keep me in mind, and Veterans Walk and Talk in mind for when you need to put the word out and get, all that stuff, 100% behind you on that mission. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing you're doing.
Awesome. Will do. Okay. This is great, man.
Yeah, great.
Well, look, what kept you going when you wanted to give up?
Man, my children. I've always wanted to be a father, man, as long as I can remember. Even as a young child, kid, my children. I have 2 stepkids and 2 biological children, and they are the lights of my life. And everything I've ever wanted, I ground me in the moment, everything, man. My children, they have kept me going through thick and thin, and do even right now. So my children, man, for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. And so my last question, right?
Yes.
It's all about the darkest hour. Do you think a person needs to wait till they're in their darkest hour to make a change?
I don't think that people need to wait till we're in our darkest hour. Like when I shot myself, that was as low as I thought I'd ever get. And then yet I still went to Afghanistan and lost all that I lost, and went through all that I went through, and did all the heroin afterwards and everything. So no, I don't think people need to get to their darkest hour. And then a lot of times it's accepting that you're going to have a lot of dark hours being human being in this world. And it is what you do with them that empowers you. Unfortunately, for a lot of veterans, because we're taught to, always be okay and proud and everything like that, it does take getting to that low point before real impactful change can happen. Breaking, even if it's just punching a hole in the wall, or in more extreme cases, hitting your spouse, or in very, very extreme cases, suicidal attempts, which are so rampant in our community, not just suicidal successes, but suicidal attempts. So, what I'm hoping to do and make my mark in the veteran mental health wellness journey is to be kind of a cog in the wheel of the veteran dark moments. I want Veterans Walk and Talk to be something that, active duty personnel are encouraged to go and participate in 6 months before their ETS date. Whether it be Veterans Walk and Talk or another program of poetry or music or jujitsu or anything like that, anything communal that is going to teach you that, you're not alone. That is where I see the future for Veterans Walk and Talk and mental health with veterans. But to answer your question directly, Greg, it's more, I don't think that people need to get to their darkest point in order to have profound change or profound healing. But what I do know is that this country isn't set up well for us to discover that kind of honesty and truth on our own. A lot of times it does take a very, very impactful catalyst, in many cases being a very dark moment in our lives, in order to realize that we can come through just about anything.
Yeah. And so with that, it makes me wonder about seeking professional help, right? So when you were going through what you were going through, did it help seeking a counselor? And if so, did their race, experience, gender, background play a part in how effective it was?
The only thing that seeking professional help did for me was to bring me to this moment right now talking to you. Everything I did is why I'm here. So yes, it did help. In the moment when I was sitting there across from the counselors at the VA and the therapists, man, I just told them whatever I had to keep my bed. And I had a full range of people, Israeli doctors, white doctors, people of color doctors, all kinds. And the problem is that none of that mattered. What mattered was the overall system in which they were playing out. The VA was meant to annotate and record rather than engage and heal. And so that, I mean, I remember just getting nothing out of those meetings. You know what I mean? It would be just innocuous. Yeah.
I got you. Okay. No, that's completely honest, and that's good. I mean, for me, like, I was the same way. I felt like I was too smart for my own good when it came to like talking with one of them, because it was like, I hear you, I'm learning, I'll tell you what you need to know, but it doesn't help. It's not bringing them back. It's not helping me move forward or process. It's just, all right, what are we doing? And so it took some effort on my end, and for me to find actual people in a community to connect to, you know, to feel like I was more than just a number, in order for me to feel like what was being said to me and the guidance that was being given to me actually helped. Right. So I appreciate you, you know, sharing that part. And then I just appreciate the walk and talk, because it sounds like you're making a difference on your side of the world and with, you know, the community that you're building around you. So that's awesome, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's we had a hike yesterday. We had 26 people, 24 veterans show up, hiked about 5 miles. And like, this is the future of mental health, especially for our veteran community. This is what it's all about. I'm one man, not a doctor, but this is why I know doctors can do better. Because if I'm one man able to engage with 24 veterans during a hike and remember their names and remember their traumas and remember their nuanced problems and try to connect them, you had this problem, she had this problem you've never met before, come walk a few miles together and talk about it. If I'm able to do those things, there's no reason why doctors and mental health professionals and the people that are paid literally billions of dollars in an industry should be able to do these things as well. That's what I'm hoping for. Yeah. I see you being that change agent that's needed. I like that, bro. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Last question.
Yes.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Get off the snowboard. No, it would be I would tell myself to believe in myself, to have faith in myself, to know that I'm much more powerful within than I give myself credit for, or that people were telling me, that I was capable of profound realization, and that to trust myself, man. That's the biggest thing I wish I would have known growing up. I was always putting my faith into everyone else around me or other things, or let me try what he did, or let me try what she did, or, you know, and it was always within me to just sit with myself and realize that the journey is the destination, and all those cliches. It's absolutely true. So yeah, if I could go after the initial fear that the childhood Colin saw when he saw that you're going to look like this when you're 38, after he got over that, I would tell him, have faith in yourself, brother. You're going to be all right.
I like that. All right. And so looking back now, do you see your growth from then till now?
Yeah, of course. I'm a fulfilled man, and I look forward to the man I'll be in 20 years. I'm as fulfilled as I could possibly ever hope for in life. Absolutely. My growth is, I'm like a plant that's rooted through its pot. You can't be denied. You just see it everywhere. Indeed.
Well, look, I appreciate you sharing this. It's been insightful. I got 2 pages worth of notes, a couple of gems, and some tools to put in my toolkit. I hope y'all did it there. I want to turn it over to you and talk a little more about the Veterans Walk and Talk, how people can contact you, where they can go to get some more information. And yeah, we'll call it a day from there.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. You can sign up for our membership. You don't have to be in the area, you can sign up, get the information, newsletters and everything. I encourage anyone and everyone, veteran or non-veteran, to sign up for our membership at veteranswalkandtalk.com. There's a member form on there. Our hikes they're not closed veteran hikes. They're open to anyone who feels compelled to come. What it is veteran focused. You understand, if you come, we're going to be discussing a lot of veteran issues, but the issues that our veterans are facing are American issues. And so it resonates with everyone. Veterans receive the medicine for free. Other than that, everyone's welcome to come. So veteranswalkandtalk.com. At Veterans Walk and Talk on Instagram. If you want to, check out our content and my funny dancing videos and shit like that, we have a lot of fun over there. And I think we do a good job curating educational and comedic content. If you want to support our missions, our various missions, you can do so at vwatstore.com, VWAT-store.com, which we have a bunch of shirts and merch that goes directly to helping our mission. A Future for Vets Foundation out of Oakland is one of our nonprofits that helps fiscally sponsor Veterans Walk and Talk, and we do housing for veterans in the Oakland and Bay Area through that. And then we also have the Vitality Corporation. We do the Cans for Vets program. So we essentially we collect recycling from various cannabis dispensaries and businesses local to us. We sort it, we take it to the recycling center, and off this last month, Veterans Walk and Talk received all that money in order to further our mission. But in past months, we have used that money to train security officers through Fidelity Security Solutions, getting them jobs in cannabis and also distribution all over the cannabis community. Mike Owen, a great man, runs both those foundations. A lot of irons in the fire, a lot of ways to help veterans through just the Veterans Walk and Talk program. Veterans Walk and Talk Sacramento. We have Veterans Walk and Talk San Diego. We just started Veterans Walk and Talk Bay Area. We're looking to push a national program here in the next year, develop an app connecting veterans with incentivized wellness. There's a lot of ways people can get involved. Thank you.
Man, no, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing and for the work you're doing, man. You already saving lives. So, I appreciate you.
That means a lot, Greg. I look forward to shaking your hand in person someday soon.
Same here, brother. Same here. Well, look, everyone, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, this show. It was amazing. Colin, thank you again. I want all y'all out there to remember that your mental health is important and to take it seriously. And don't be afraid to stand up for that inner person in you to walk that walk of your own well-being. And so with that being said, this is Colin and Greg telling y'all to stay safe, stay focused, and stay engaged. We're out.
You've been listening to Guards Down with Greg Washington. PTSD and complicated grief are very real. About 8 out of every 100 people will have PTSD at some point in their lives. About 20 to 54% of people with complicated grief will simultaneously suffer from major depressive disorder. And that's why shows like this are hugely important. Raising awareness for PTSD and complicated grief. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hook up with us at guardsdown.com. weareiron.org, on Facebook at Guards Down, and find us on YouTube and Instagram.